You can't park that monstrosity here. Her voice cut through the Arizona heat like a knife, sharp enough to slice through the 108-degree morning air. This is a residential street, not some trashy construction zone. I stood there, arms crossed, watching Rebecca Thornton's face turn from its carefully maintained porcelain complexion to a shade of crimson that matched her designer handbag. She jabbed her manicured finger French tips, probably $80 at the salon at my concrete mixer truck, like she was casting a spell to make it disappear. Behind her oversized Gucci sunglasses, the kind that cost more than most people's car payments, I could see the rage building like a summer monsoon rolling across the Superstition Mountains. "Ma'am," I said calmly, keeping my voice level despite the adrenaline starting to pump through my veins, "this is my private access road. Check the county records at the Maricopa County Recorder's Office. Parcel number 2, 1744003. She stepped closer, invading my personal space with a cloud of expensive perfume that probably cost $200 an ounce. Her iPhone thrust forward like a weapon, recording every second. The morning sun glinted off her phone's rose gold case. "I'm calling the police. I'm calling the news. I'm calling my attorney. You're destroying our property values. Do you have any idea what homes in Sunset Ridge are worth? About $2.8 million for yours." I said evenly. "I looked it up on Zillow. Congratulations on your purchase, by the way. Beautiful home." Her mouth opened, then closed. She hadn't expected me to know that detail. This aggressive behavior is exactly what I've been warning the HOA board about. You're a menace to this community. That morning, September 12th, 2024 to be exact, a Thursday that started at 72 degrees and would climb to 110 by noon. I didn't know that this screaming match would be the opening shot in a 6-month war that would consume my life, cost her everything, and eventually go viral with over 15 million views across social media platforms. I didn't know that this moment, with her finger jabbing and my arms crossed, would be the beginning of the most satisfying case of legal karma I'd ever witness. My name's Daniel Vasquez. I'm 52 years old, though my sun-weathered face probably makes me look closer to 60. That's what 30 years in the Arizona concrete business does to you. I run Vasquez Commercial Concrete, a company I built from the ground up with a single mixer truck, a line of credit, and more determination than common sense. For 15 years, I'd lived peacefully on 3 acres of desert property bordering the Sunset Ridge HOA community in North Scottsdale, where the houses start at $1 million and the attitudes are priced even higher. My property sits on the eastern edge of Scottsdale, right where the meticulously maintained lawns and imported palm trees of wealthy subdivisions meet the honest, dusty reality of working Arizona. It's that awkward border where people who make their money clash with people who work for their money. I bought the land in 2009, right after the housing crash, when nobody wanted property that wasn't inside a gated community with a golf course and a homeowners association to tell them what color they could paint their mailbox. Then Rebecca Thornton moved in, and everything changed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning. Back to when I still believed that reasonable people could solve problems with reasonable conversations. Back when I thought someone who drove a Range Rover and carried a $3,000 handbag would understand basic property law. Back when I was naive enough to think that a polite conversation could solve what would eventually require 32,000 pounds of rolling concrete to resolve. The sound that would eventually echo through every neighborhood forum, viral video, and news broadcast wasn't just concrete meeting metal, it was entitlement meeting reality. When my 32,000-pound cement mixer rolled over her pearl-white Range Rover that cold December morning, the crash sent shockwaves through more than just sheet metal and aluminum. It sent a message that had been building for months. Ignored warning after ignored warning. Patience has limits. Documentation has power, and consequences, when they're earned through systematic disregard for both law and decency, are absolutely inevitable. But I'm getting ahead of myself again. The crash, that beautiful, terrible, legally justified crash, was the climax. To understand why it happened, why it had to happen, and why a jury would later rule in my favor without deliberation, you need to understand how I got there. You need to understand the months of harassment, the fake fines, the fraudulent legal documents, and the systematic campaign of intimidation that Rebecca Thornton waged against a man whose only crime was owning property adjacent to her kingdom. Let me take you back to the beginning, back when my gate was just a gate, not a battlefield, back when I still believed in the fundamental goodness of people. My property is 3 acres of high desert land, the kind of lot that real estate agents call transitional because it sits between the manicured paradise of HOA communities and the rugged reality of commercial Arizona. I bought it in March 2009 for $187,000 a steal during the housing crash, when desperate sellers were practically giving away land that didn't come with community pools and fitness centers. The property came with an old ranch house, built in 1967, that I renovated over 2 years. New roof, new electrical, new plumbing, and a covered patio where I could sit in the evenings and watch the sun paint the McDowell Mountains purple and gold. But the real value was the access road, a private gravel drive that connected my property to East McDowell Road, a main thoroughfare. That road, that crucial strip of gravel and caliche, was mine. Completely, legally, undeniably mine. The deed was recorded at the Maricopa County Recorder's Office on March 24, 2009, with a metes and bounds description that left zero ambiguity. I maintained it. I graded it twice a year. I paid the property taxes on it. I even had signs made, professional metal signs that read private road, no parking, violators will be towed. For 15 years, nobody questioned it. The Sunset Ridge HOA community, which bordered my property to the west, had their own entrance with a fancy gate and a guardhouse and a fountain that probably cost more than my truck. Their residents didn't need to use my road. They had no reason to use my road, and for 15 years, they didn't. The neighborhood was mostly retired snowbirds who spent summers in Colorado and winters playing golf in Arizona, plus some young executive families who worked in downtown Phoenix and drove German cars. They were polite when we crossed paths at the gas station. Some of them ordered decorative concrete work from me, stamped patios, colored driveways, decorative walkways. I gave them the neighbor discount, they paid on time, and we coexisted peacefully in that quiet way that good neighbors do. My business grew steadily during those years. Vasquez Commercial Concrete started with me, 1 truck, and a lot of hustle. By 2024, I had 4 concrete mixer trucks, 6 employees, and contracts with some of the biggest developers in the Phoenix metropolitan area. We specialized in commercial work, parking structures, warehouse floors, the unglamorous but essential foundations that keep buildings standing in 115-degree heat. My trucks were loud, sure. They were big and diesel-powered and not particularly pretty. But they only operated during business hours. They only used my private access road. And they never, not once in 15 years, caused a problem for the Sunset Ridge community. I was a good neighbor. I kept my property neat. I didn't throw loud parties. I picked up my mail, watered my drought-resistant landscaping, and lived a quiet life. On weekends, I'd work on my 1,969 Chevy C10 pickup truck in my garage, or I'd drive out to Bartlett Lake for some fishing, or I'd video chat with my daughter Maria, who lived in San Diego with my 2 grandkids. Life was simple. Life was good. Life was peaceful. Then, on March 15th, 2024, a moving truck pulled up to the corner mansion in Sunset Ridge, the biggest house in the community, a 6,800 square foot monument to excess with 6 bedrooms, a pool, a casita, and a 3-car garage. The house had sold for $2.8 million to Keith and Rebecca Thornton, transplants from Orange County, California, where apparently everyone is rich, entitled, and allergic to the concept of minding their own business. I didn't meet Rebecca immediately. I saw her from a distance that first week, a blonde woman, in her early 40s, always impeccably dressed, even when taking out the trash, always on her phone, always moving with the kind of purposeful energy that suggested she had very important things to do and very little patience for people who might slow her down. The first time Rebecca Thornton spoke to me was at a community event I didn't even want to attend. The Sunset Ridge HOA held a spring social at their clubhouse, a catered affair with wine and cheese and little signs asking attendees to meet your neighbors. I only went because my friend Tom Ramirez, who lived 3 houses into Sunset Ridge, had specifically invited me. Tom was a retired Scottsdale fire captain, a good man who believed in community and connection, and I didn't want to disappoint him. I showed up in clean jeans and a polo shirt, feeling immediately underdressed among the golf attire and resort casual outfits. I grabbed a beer from the bar and was making small talk with Tom when a voice behind me said, "You must be the concrete guy." I turned. Rebecca Thornton stood there in white linen pants, a coral-colored blouse, and jewelry that caught the light with every movement. Her smile was perfect, too perfect, like something practiced in a mirror. "Daniel Vasquez," I said, extending my hand. "I run Vasquez Commercial Concrete." She shook my hand limply, as if touching something slightly distasteful. "Rebecca Thornton, I just moved into the estates section. I'm the new vice president of the HOA board." "Congratulations," I said, though I couldn't imagine why anyone would want that particular headache. "I've been reviewing our community boundaries and bylaws," she continued, not bothering with small talk. "And I noticed your property sits adjacent to ours. Your trucks use the access road near our community entrance, correct? That's my private road," I said. "It connects my property to McDowell Road, has for 15 years. Her smile tightened. "Yes, well, we'll need to discuss the aesthetic impact. Several residents have expressed concern about commercial vehicles in what's supposed to be a residential area. My trucks don't enter your community," I said carefully. "They use my private road on my property. Perception is important in real estate," she said, her tone suggesting I was missing something obvious. "We're all invested in maintaining property values here. I'm sure you understand." Tom, bless him, tried to change the subject. "Rebecca, have you tried the bruschetta? It's fantastic." But Rebecca wasn't done. "Mr. Vasquez, I think we should schedule a meeting with the board to discuss some accommodations that might work for everyone." "Accommodations for what?" I asked. "Well, perhaps adjusted operating hours, restricted routes, a more community-sensitive approach to your business operations." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "Ma'am, with all respect, my business operations are on my private property. The HOA doesn't have jurisdiction over my land." Her smile vanished completely. "We'll see about that." Then she turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with a beer in my hand and a very bad feeling in my gut. Tom grimaced. "She's been like that with everyone. Already sent violation notices to 3 homeowners for plants she doesn't like. She knows she can't tell me what to do on my own property, right?" "I don't think Rebecca recognizes limits," Tom said quietly. "Just document everything if she starts causing problems." That conversation happened on March 23rd, 2024, 8 days after she moved in. It would be exactly 3 weeks before she parked in front of my gate for the first time. The first time Rebecca Thornton parked in front of my gate, I genuinely thought it was an honest mistake. It was April 14th, 2024, a Thursday afternoon when the temperature had already hit 95 degrees by 3 p.m. I was returning from a job site in Tempe, a warehouse floor pour that had gone perfectly, my crew finishing an hour ahead of schedule, and I was looking forward to a cold beer and maybe fixing that squeaky hinge on my garage door. As I turned onto my access road, I saw it immediately. A pearl white Range Rover autobiography, probably $120,000 worth of British luxury engineering, parked directly in front of my iron gate. Not off to the side where it might be considered inconsiderate but forgivable. Not at an angle that suggested someone had pulled over in an emergency. Dead center. Perfectly positioned to block the entrance completely, as if the driver had carefully measured to ensure maximum obstruction. I honked once, a polite tap on the horn, the kind that says, "Excuse me, I need to get through." No response. The Range Rover sat there, gleaming and indifferent, its chrome accents catching the afternoon sun. I waited 30 seconds, I actually counted, and honked again, longer this time. Still nothing. I put my truck in park, killed the engine, and got out. The heat hit me like walking into an oven. I could feel sweat starting to form under my shirt as I walked toward the Range Rover, my boots crunching on the gravel. The vehicle was immaculate, not a speck of dust on the white paint, the windows tinted dark enough that I couldn't see inside. The license plate frame read, "Boss Lady," in elegant script. I was about to pull out my phone to call the local towing company when I saw her. A woman came jogging down the sidewalk from the direction of the Sunset Ridge clubhouse, moving with the easy rhythm of someone who ran 5 miles before breakfast and thought nothing of it. She wore black Lululemon leggings that probably cost $140, a neon pink athletic top, white Nike running shoes that looked fresh out of the box, and had wireless earbuds in both ears. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect ponytail that didn't move despite the jogging. "Excuse me," I called out, raising my hand. "Is this your vehicle?" She pulled out one earbud, barely slowing her pace. For a moment, she looked at me with an expression of mild annoyance, as if I'd interrupted an important phone call rather than blocked my own driveway. "Yeah, it's mine. Just give me a minute. I'm doing my cool-down lap." I gestured to the heavy iron gate behind her Range Rover, trying to keep my voice friendly. "You're blocking my driveway. I need to get through." Her expression shifted immediately from mild annoyance to something sharper. Her eyes narrowed behind her designer sunglasses. Prada, I'd later learn, $450 a pair. "This is community access, isn't it? I checked the plat map online." "No, ma'am," I said, pointing to the nearest sign, which was mounted on a steel post about 15 feet away and clearly visible. "This is private property. That sign right there says private road. I own this access road. The deed is recorded at the Maricopa County Recorder's Office, parcel number 217-44003. She pulled off her sunglasses, and I got my first clear look at Rebecca Thornton's face. She was probably in her early 40s, with the kind of ageless beauty that comes from excellent genetics, expensive skincare, and possibly some very subtle cosmetic work. Her eyes were pale blue, almost ice-colored, and they studied me with the calculating look of someone assessing whether I was worth her time. "The HOA maintains this section," she said, not as a question, but as a statement of fact. "I've seen the budget reports. We allocated $12,000 for road maintenance this year. That's for the roads inside your community," I explained, forcing patience into my voice. "This road, the one your car is currently blocking, is not part of Sunset Ridge. It's my property. I maintain it. I grade it twice a year. I pay the taxes on it. It's been mine since 2009. She crossed her arms, and I noticed her Apple Watch, the Hermes edition, retail price around $1,500. Everything about Rebecca Thornton screamed money and the absolute certainty that money meant authority. "Well," she said slowly, "I'm sure we can sort this out at the next HOA board meeting. I'm vice president, you know. We can discuss the easement situation and come to an arrangement that works for everyone." "There's no easement," I said. "And there's nothing to arrange. This is my private property, and your car is trespassing on it." Her smile turned brittle. "Trespassing is a strong word, Mr. Vasquez. Daniel Vasquez. And yes, trespassing is the correct legal term for parking on someone's private property without permission. Well, Mr. Vasquez," she said, replacing her sunglasses and her earbud simultaneously, "I'm sure we'll get this little misunderstanding cleared up soon. I'll move my car when I finish my workout routine. I have a very strict cool-down schedule. My trainer says it's essential for muscle recovery. Ma'am, I need to get through now. I have work to do, and I have a workout to finish," she said, her voice taking on a sharp edge. "The world doesn't revolve around your schedule, does it?" She smiled, a smile that held no warmth whatsoever. "You know, being more neighborly might help with situations like this. Have you considered that?" Before I could respond, she put her earbud back in, turned away, and jogged off toward the clubhouse, leaving her Range Rover exactly where it sat. I stood there in the afternoon heat, watching her disappear around a corner, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: complete, utter disbelief at another human being's behavior. I checked my watch, 3:17 p.m. I pulled out my phone and took 3 photographs, one of her Range Rover blocking my gate, one of the private road sign clearly visible in the background, and one wider shot showing the position of her vehicle relative to my property. Then I called Southwest Towing. Southwest Towing, this is Monica. Hi Monica, this is Daniel Vasquez. I need a vehicle towed from my private property. It's blocking my entrance gate. There was a pause, the sound of keyboard clicking. Okay, Mr. Vasquez. Can you confirm the vehicle is on your private property and you're the property owner? Yes, I own the access road, and someone parked right in front of my gate. I've asked them to move, and they refused. Is the driver present? No. She walked away. More clicking. Okay. And is this property part of an HOA or community association? I felt a warning tingle. No. The vehicle's owner claims it is, but it's not. This is my private land. Here's the thing, Monica said, her voice sympathetic but firm. If the vehicle owner is claiming HOA jurisdiction, we need clear documentation before we can tow. Otherwise, we could be liable if she disputes the tow. Do you have the deed handy? Property survey? Anything that proves definitively that this is your private property? I have the deed, but it's in my filing cabinet at home, which I can't get to, because her car is blocking my gate. I understand the frustration, sir, but legally we need that documentation. Can you email or fax it to us? I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling a headache starting. How long will that take? Once we have the documentation, probably 3 to 4 hours for a truck to get out there. We're running pretty full today. 3 to 4 hours. I'm sorry, Mr. Vasquez. That's the best we can do. I thanked her and hung up. Then, I did something I almost never do. I sat down on the running board of my truck and just waited. I wasn't angry, yet anger would come later. At that moment, I was just stunned. Stunned that someone could be so casually, deliberately obstructive. Stunned that she'd heard me explain that this was private property and simply didn't care. Stunned that a grown woman would park her $120,000 vehicle across someone's driveway and then walk away to finish her cool-down lap. I waited there for 93 minutes. I know because I checked my phone obsessively, watching the minutes crawl by, watching the temperature gauge climb to 97, then 98, then finally touch 100 degrees. I drank 2 bottles of water from the cooler in my truck bed. I answered 3 work emails. I listened to a podcast about the history of concrete. Yes, that's a thing. And yes, it's fascinating if you're in the business. And I waited. Rebecca finally returned at 4:50 p.m. She came walking down the sidewalk, not jogging this time, looking fresh as a daisy, carrying a large Starbucks cup with what appeared to be some kind of iced coffee drink. Her hair was still perfect. Her makeup hadn't smudged. She looked like someone who'd spent the afternoon at a spa, not someone who'd left a man sitting in 100-degree heat because she couldn't be bothered to move her car. "Oh," she said when she saw me, as if surprised I was still there. "You're still here." I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 52 years in my knees. "You said you'd move your car when you finished your workout." "I did finish it," she said, pulling out her key fob. "Over an hour ago. Then I had a smoothie and caught up with some friends. You know how it is." She clicked the button, and the Range Rover chirped, its lights flashing twice. "You cost me 93 minutes of work today," I said, trying to keep my voice even. That's time I could have spent on job estimates, equipment maintenance, or actually getting into my property. She opened the driver's door and tossed her Starbucks cup into the center console. "Well, maybe if you'd been more cooperative about discussing the access road situation with the HOA, we wouldn't have these little conflicts." "Little conflicts? You parked on my private property." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she said, sliding into her leather seat. "It's just a parking spot." We're all neighbors here." She started the engine it purred to life with that distinctive Range Rover growl and adjusted her rearview mirror, taking her time. Then she looked at me through the open window and smiled. "You really should consider being more flexible, Daniel. It'll make your life so much easier." Then she put the Range Rover in reverse, backed up just enough to clear my gate, and drove off, leaving me standing in a cloud of dust and exhaust, holding photographs of her trespassing and a very clear understanding that this was not, in any way, over. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and started a new folder. I labeled it Property Documentation, Thornton Issue, and saved the 3 photographs I'd taken, along with screenshots showing the timestamp. Then I pulled up the Maricopa County Assessor's website and downloaded a copy of my property deed, the survey map, and the tax records showing I'd been paying property taxes on that access road for 15 years. I didn't know it then, but that folder would eventually contain 247 separate documents, photographs, videos, and pieces of evidence. I didn't know that those 3 photographs would be the first entries in a 6-month campaign of harassment that would cost me thousands of dollars, dozens of lost work hours, and eventually require the intervention of law enforcement, an attorney, and 1 very large concrete mixer truck. All I knew that night was that Rebecca Thornton had made a choice. She'd chosen to ignore my property rights, dismiss my polite request, and demonstrate that she believed the rules simply didn't apply to her. And I'd made a choice too. I was going to document everything, every single thing. The next day, I found an official-looking letter wedged in my gate latch. HOA letterhead, gold embossed seal, Rebecca's signature swooping across the bottom like calligraphy. The notice of violation claimed my gate restricted community access to shared infrastructure and demanded I pay a $400 fine within 14 days or face legal action. I actually laughed out loud. My property wasn't even within HOA boundaries. They had 0 authority over my land. But something about that letter got under my skin, not the fake fine, but the sheer audacity. The assumption that she could simply manufacture rules and I'd bow to them. By the end of that first month, she'd blocked my gate 7 more times. Once to attend a neighborhood beautification committee meeting, another time for her wellness brunch. Each time, she refused to move when asked, flashing her HOA vice president badge like it was a federal shield. "You can't threaten a board member on shared property," she'd say, recording our conversations on her phone. I started documenting everything. Date, time, location, photos of her vehicle's position. When I emailed the HOA board requesting they address the situation, I received a response 5 days later. "Thank you for your concern. After review, the board has determined that Mrs. Thornton's use of the access road falls within reasonable community activity." Reasonable activity. Apparently that now included trespassing and blocking commercial access. This wasn't about parking anymore. It was about control. She wanted to prove that even outside her HOA bubble, her rules still mattered. The following week, I installed 2 additional signs, larger, reflective, impossible to miss. The day after installation, I found one spray painted over with the words HOA, access only, in hot pink. It was war by inches. I decided to stay calm. I'd spent 30 years in the concrete business dealing with difficult clients, impossible deadlines, and the Arizona heat that could break weaker men. I wasn't going to let some self-appointed neighborhood dictator drag me down to her level. I kept my head down, focused on work, and tried to ignore it. But Rebecca escalated. One Saturday morning in June, my foreman radioed in. "Boss, we can't get through. There's a car blocking the gate. I already knew whose it was." By the time I arrived, Rebecca was standing in front of her Range Rover, arms crossed, filming everything on her phone. "Move your car," I said, stepping out of my truck. She smirked. "Smile, Daniel. You're being documented for HOA records." "This isn't a game, Rebecca. You're costing me money. Maybe you should have been more cooperative," she said. "I've filed 17 formal complaints about your trucks disturbing our peaceful community." "My trucks use my private road," I said. They don't even enter your community. The noise does, the dust does. The decline in our property values does. That's when I understood something fundamental about people like her. They don't want resolution, they want submission. That night, I called my old college roommate, Marcus Chen, who'd become a real estate attorney in Phoenix. I told him everything. He chuckled darkly. Classic HOA power play. Document everything. Photos, timestamps, witness statements. You'll need it. What about these fake fines she's sending? Marcus paused. If she's issuing them on property outside HOA jurisdiction and representing them as official, that's fraud. But don't confront her yet. Stay clean. Build your case. Patience was something concrete work teaches you. You don't rush the cure. You prepare the forms, mix the aggregate properly, pour with precision, and let chemistry do its work. I didn't know how far Rebecca would go, but I knew this. She'd already poured the foundation of her own destruction. She just didn't know it was setting yet. By July, dealing with Rebecca had become a second full-time job. Every time I thought she'd reached peak audacity, she found a new level. She started parking not just in front of my gate, but at angles that made it impossible for my concrete mixer trucks to maneuver around her. Her Range Rover would sit there, gleaming and obstinate, sometimes for hours. When I confronted her, she'd pull out her phone, start recording, and recite prepared statements. This harassment must stop. As HOA Vice President, I have a duty to protect our community from aggressive commercial intrusion. After I installed my 2 new reflective signs, I found them defaced within 48 hours. Not just spray painted this time, someone had poured concrete mix over one sign and let it harden, completely obscuring the words. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I filed a police report. The officer who responded was sympathetic, but blunt. Mr. Vasquez, this is technically vandalism, but without witnesses or camera footage, it's hard to prosecute. Have you considered installing security cameras? I had. The next day, I contacted a security company and had 3 high-definition cameras installed covering my gate, the access road, and the property line. Each camera stamped video with date and time, uploaded automatically to cloud storage. If Rebecca wanted to play games, I'd make sure every move was recorded in 4K. The real breaking point came in August. I'd landed a major contract with a luxury resort developer, a $180,000 job requiring multiple concrete pours over 6 weeks. The timeline was tight, the specifications exact, and the penalty for delays was brutal, $2,000 per day. My crew scheduled the first pour for August 12th at 6 a.m. We needed to start early to beat the Arizona heat, which regularly hit 110 degrees Fahrenheit by midday. I sent my crew ahead while I finalized paperwork at my office. At 5:50 a.m., my foreman Carlos called, "Boss, we've got a problem. That white Range Rover is back. It's blocking the gate completely." My stomach dropped. "You've got to be kidding me." "No, sir." "And there's no one around." I drove there immediately, arriving at 6:15 a.m. Sure enough, Rebecca's Range Rover sat perfectly centered across my gate entrance, as if positioned specifically to cause maximum disruption. The desert morning was cool, quiet, except for the idle of my mixer truck down the road. I called Rebecca's cell, straight to voicemail. I called her house. No answer. I called the HOA office. "Mrs. Thornton is unavailable at this time," the receptionist said. "This is an emergency," I said. "She's blocking commercial access and costing me thousands of dollars." "I'll make a note in her message box." My concrete mixer sat there, drum slowly rotating to keep the mix from setting, burning fuel, wasting time. Every minute that passed was lost money, not just from the delay, but from the concrete itself, which has a limited working window. If we couldn't pour within 2 hours, the entire batch would be ruined. I took photos, recorded video, time-stamped everything. At 7:45 a.m., Rebecca finally appeared, walking down the sidewalk in yoga pants and a tank top, holding a smoothie. "Morning, Daniel," she called out cheerfully. "You're costing me $180,000, I said, my voice tight. She sipped her smoothie. That sounds like a business planning issue. Move. Your car. Or what? She said, eyes glinting behind her sunglasses. You'll do what? Exactly? Assault me? Damage my property? Go ahead, you're on camera. She gestured to her phone mounted on a nearby fence post, recording everything. I have witnesses who'll testify to your threatening behavior. That's when I felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Rage is hot and stupid. This was cold and calculating. She'd crossed from nuisance into sabotage. She was deliberately destroying my business, filming it, and daring me to react. I pulled out my phone and called Marcus Chen. Marcus, she's blocking a $180,000 job. The concrete's going to set. I need options now. He thought for a moment. How much documentation do you have? 6 months worth. Photos, videos, police reports, everything. Then it's time, he said. File for a restraining order and an injunction. But Daniel, don't touch her car. Don't even get close. The moment you do, you're the bad guy. Understood. I turned to Rebecca. I'm filing a restraining order this afternoon. You're trespassing on private property, causing economic harm, and engaging in harassment. My attorney will be in touch. Her smile faltered for just a second. Then she recovered. Good luck with that. My husband's a lawyer. No, he's not, I said quietly. He's a paralegal at Gonzalez and Associates. I checked. Her face went pale. I got back in my truck, radioed my crew to dump the concrete load, a $3,400 loss, and drove straight to Marcus's office. By noon, we'd filed a temporary restraining order and a civil complaint for trespassing, harassment, and economic interference. The court date was set for September 30th. That afternoon, a Maricopa County Sheriff's deputy served Rebecca with the restraining order in front of her house. According to neighbors who later told me the story, she screamed so loud that people 3 houses down came outside to watch. She called the HOA president, the local news, and apparently her lawyer husband, who told her she was on her own. The restraining order was simple: stay 100 feet away from my property, my gate, and my access road. Violation would result in immediate arrest. For 2 weeks, it worked. My gate stayed clear. I completed 3 concrete pours without incident. I started to believe maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was over. Then I discovered what Rebecca had been doing behind the scenes. In late September, I received a certified letter from the Maricopa County Recorder's Office. It referenced an HOA lien filed against my property for $4,700 in unpaid assessments and fines. I called Marcus immediately. How is this possible? My property isn't even in the HOA. He pulled the filing. She submitted falsified documents claiming your parcel was annexed into the HOA in 2018. It's completely fraudulent, but it's on the record now. Can she do that? No. It's fraud. But we need to get it removed officially, which means more court filings, more time, more money. I stared at the letter, feeling the weight of months of harassment crystallize into pure cold certainty. Marcus, I'm done playing defense. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to solve this problem permanently. Legally, but permanently. There was a long pause. What are you thinking? You told me to document everything by the book, right? Right. Then I'm going to use that documentation exactly how it's supposed to be used. I have a legitimate business. I have property rights. And I have 6 months of evidence showing systematic trespassing and harassment. What if I just operate my business normally and let the chips fall where they may? Marcus was quiet for a moment. If you give proper notice, certified mail, visible signage, multiple warnings, and she still trespasses, then any consequences are on her. That's what I thought. Daniel, be very careful. Make sure everything is airtight. No improvisation, no theatrics. Just documentation and lawful business operations. Understood. When we hung up, I sat in my office looking out at my yard full of concrete mixer trucks, each one weighing between 20,000 and 32,000 pounds when fully loaded. Tools built for work, not revenge. But if someone stood in front of a tool while it was working, well, that was a choice they made. I spent the next 2 weeks building my case with the precision I usually reserved for commercial foundation pours. First, I compiled every piece of evidence: 174 photographs of Rebecca's Range Rover blocking my gate, 23 video clips showing her refusing to move, 16 time-stamped police reports, copies of her fraudulent HOA fines, the fake lien filing, text messages, emails, and witness statements from my crew, my clients, and even a few neighbors who'd grown tired of her behavior. Then I scheduled a legitimate job. A residential client in North Scottsdale needed a large driveway pour $12,000 contract scheduled for December 4th, 2024 at 6:30 a.m. The concrete mixer would need to access my property, load the specific mix design, and depart by 7 a.m. to maintain the delivery schedule. I documented everything: the contract, the timeline, the route, the specifications. Next came the notifications. Marcus helped me draft a certified letter to Rebecca Thornton. Dear Mrs. Thornton, please be advised that commercial concrete operations will be conducted via the private access road at 4847E, McDowell Road on the 4th of December 2024, beginning at 6 a.m. All vehicles obstructing this private access road will be considered abandoned property, interfering with lawful commerce. This notice constitutes formal legal warning pursuant to Arizona Revised Statutes, Section 33 to 1801. You are hereby directed to refrain from parking on or blocking said private property. Failure to comply may result in property damage for which the owner assumes full liability. Sincerely, Daniel Vasquez, owner, Vasquez Commercial Concrete. The letter was delivered via certified mail on November 27th. Rebecca signed for it. I have the receipt with her signature. Then I installed new signage, not the small metal signs that had been defaced, but professional-grade road signs, 36 inches wide, diamond-grade reflective material, mounted on steel posts set in concrete. Each sign read, Privet Road, commercial traffic, no parking 6 a.m. 8 a.m., violators liable for damages. I placed 4 signs, one at my gate, one at the property line, one at the intersection with the public road, and one directly facing the Sunset Ridge community entrance. Each sign included the date of installation and the effective date of the restriction. Then I installed a 5th camera, this one mounted high on a pole with a wide-angle lens covering the entire gate area and approach. The footage streamed live to my phone and archived to cloud storage automatically. I called the Maricopa County Sheriff's non-emergency line and informed them of my scheduled operation, providing the deputy with copies of my certified letter, signage, photos, and evidence file. The deputy made a note in the system and said they'd have a unit nearby on the morning of December 4th, just in case. I notified the HOA board via email, attaching copies of all documentation. I didn't ask permission, my property wasn't under their jurisdiction, but I wanted them to know that Rebecca had been warned through every possible channel. The night of December 3rd, I couldn't sleep. Not from nervousness, but from anticipation. I'd done everything right. Every notification sent, every warning posted, every legal requirement met. If Rebecca parked in front of my gate tomorrow morning, it would be a conscious choice made with full knowledge of the consequences. At 5:15 a.m. on December 4th, my phone alarm went off. I made coffee, reviewed my documentation one final time, and drove to my property in the pre-dawn darkness. The temperature was 52 degrees Fahrenheit, cool for Arizona, perfect for concrete work. I arrived at 5:45 a.m. and did a security sweep with my flashlight. The gate was clear. The access road was empty. For a moment, I felt something close to disappointment. Maybe she'd finally learned. Maybe the certified letter and restraining order had actually worked. Then headlights appeared. At 5:52 a.m., Rebecca's white Range Rover pulled up to my gate and parked directly in front of it, not on the shoulder, not at an angle, but perfectly centered across the entrance. She got out, walked around to the front of her vehicle, and stood there with her arms crossed, staring directly at my security camera. She was wearing designer athleisure and holding her iPhone. recording. At 5:55 a.m., I called her cell phone. It rang 6 times, then went to voicemail. Rebecca, this is Daniel Vasquez. You're parked on private property after receiving certified notice. You have 5 minutes to move your vehicle before commercial operations begin. She didn't move. She stood there, recording, waiting. At 6 a.m., my concrete mixer truck arrived a 32,000-pound Kenworth with a 10 cubic yard drum, driven by my most experienced operator, Carlos Mendez. Carlos radioed me. Boss, there's a vehicle blocking the gate. I see it, I said. Proceed as planned. You sure about this? I gave her every warning possible. She made her choice. Proceed slowly, document everything, and follow the law. The concrete mixer's engine rumbled as Carlos put it in gear and began rolling forward, air brakes hissing. The truck moved at walking speed, deliberate and unstoppable. Rebecca's expression changed. I could see it on my phone screen streaming from the camera. Her confidence flickered. She raised her phone higher, recording everything, but she didn't move her Range Rover. At 6:04 a.m., the concrete mixer's front bumper made contact with the Range Rover's rear bumper. The impact was gentle at first, just steel touching steel. Carlos maintained steady pressure, and the Range Rover began to slide forward on the gravel. Then the physics took over. 32,000 pounds of loaded truck versus 5,000 pounds of luxury SUV. The Range Rover's rear suspension compressed, then buckled. The bumper crumpled like aluminum foil. The tailgate folded inward with a sound like a massive drum being crushed. Glass shattered first, the rear window, then the side windows, safety glass exploding into crystalline clouds. The rear axle broke with a sound like a gunshot. Rebecca screamed. It wasn't just surprise, it was the sound of someone watching their symbol of status and power being destroyed in real time. She ran toward the truck, waving her arms, phone still recording, screaming words I couldn't make out over the diesel engine. Carlos stopped the truck. The Range Rover sat at a 20-degree angle, rear end completely destroyed, frame twisted, fluids leaking onto the gravel. The white paint was now streaked with scratches, the pearl finish shattered like her authority. I walked over calmly, phone in hand, still recording. Rebecca, I warned you, multiple times. You chose to park on private property during scheduled commercial operations after receiving certified notice. Any damage to your vehicle is your responsibility. She was crying now, mascara running, voice hoarse. You can't do this. You destroyed my car. I'll sue you. I'll have you arrested. You'll what? I said quietly. You were trespassing on private property after repeated warnings. You were served a restraining order. You were sent certified notice. Every sign is posted. Every law was followed. You did this to yourself. A Maricopa County Sheriff's deputy arrived at 6:12 a.m. Deputy Ramirez, who'd responded to several of my previous complaints. He walked over, looked at the destroyed Range Rover, looked at Rebecca's tear-stained face, then looked at me. Mr. Vasquez, can I see your documentation? I handed him my phone, which had the entire evidence file organized. Certified letter receipt, signage, photos, restraining order, video footage from that morning, and the scheduled work contract. He scrolled through everything silently. Rebecca was screaming at him now. Arrest him. He destroyed my property. This is assault with a deadly weapon. Deputy Ramirez held up his hand. Ma'am, please calm down. He turned to me. Sir, you provided proper legal notice? Yes, sir. Certified mail, signed for on November 27th, plus 4 posted signs with clear warnings. And this is your private property? Yes, sir. Deed recorded, taxes paid. The survey shows the access road is entirely on my parcel. He nodded slowly. Ma'am, he said to Rebecca, you were parked on private property after receiving notice. Mr. Vasquez has documentation showing he warned you multiple times. This is a civil matter regarding property damage, but from what I can see, you were trespassing. I'm HOA Vice President, she shrieked. This road is under HOA jurisdiction. No, ma'am, Deputy Ramirez said patiently. I've reviewed this property dispute before. The access road is private property. The HOA has no authority here. Rebecca's face went from red to white. But I have rights. Yes, ma'am. And so does Mr. Vasquez. He has the right to operate his business on his property. You chose to obstruct that business after being warned. He turned to me. Mr. Vasquez, I'll need to file a report. You'll probably want to contact your attorney. Already done, I said. My attorney is on his way. Rebecca pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called someone, probably her husband. The conversation was brief and brutal. Keith? Keith! He destroyed the Range Rover. What do you mean you told me? What do you mean you warned me? Get here now! She hung up and slumped against the fence, sobbing. By 6:30 a.m., a crowd had gathered. Neighbors from Sunset Ridge, drawn by the noise, stood at the property line filming on their phones. Some looked shocked. Others looked satisfied. A few were openly smiling. Marcus Chen arrived at 6:45 a.m., briefcase in hand, looking like a lawyer ready for trial. He reviewed the scene, reviewed my documentation, and said to Deputy Ramirez, "Officer, my client operated his legitimate business on his private property after providing extensive notice. Mrs. Thornton chose to trespass despite a restraining order, certified warnings, and posted signage. Any damage to her vehicle is the direct result of her unlawful actions." Deputy Ramirez nodded. "That's consistent with what I'm seeing here." Rebecca's husband, Keith, arrived at 7 a.m., still in his work clothes, from an overnight shift. He took one look at the destroyed Range Rover and said, "Rebecca, what did you do?" "What did I do?" she screamed. "He attacked me. He destroyed our car." Keith walked over to Deputy Ramirez. "Officer, I'm her husband. Can you tell me what happened?" The deputy explained, certified notice, restraining order, trespassing, commercial operations on private property. Keith's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger, then resignation. He turned to Rebecca. "I told you to stop. I told you a month ago to drop this. I told you he had legal grounds. You're supposed to be a lawyer." "I'm a paralegal, Rebecca, and even I knew you couldn't win this." The destroyed Range Rover sat there like a monument to arrogance, rear end crushed, fluids pooling, emergency flashers somehow still blinking weakly. Rebecca called her insurance company from the scene, screaming about malicious destruction and demanding immediate coverage. I could hear the insurance adjuster's voice through her phone, calm and professional. "Ma'am, I'll need to see the police report and any evidence of fault. If you were trespassing on private property after being warned, your claim may be denied under the negligence clause." By 8 a.m., 3 local news vans had arrived, cameras rolling, reporters interviewing neighbors. Rebecca tried to give her version of events, a story about an aggressive businessman who destroyed her property without warning, but too many witnesses had already seen the signs, the certified mail receipt, and the video footage. One reporter interviewed me. "Mr. Vasquez, can you explain what happened?" I kept my statement brief and factual. "I operate a legitimate concrete business on private property. Mrs. Thornton repeatedly trespassed despite warnings, a restraining order, and certified legal notice. This morning, she parked in front of my gate during scheduled commercial operations. The truck proceeded as planned, and her vehicle was damaged as a result of her trespassing. I regret the property damage, but I followed every legal requirement." The reporter asked Rebecca, "Ma'am, did you receive warning that commercial operations would be taking place?" She stammered, I didn't think he'd actually. This is harassment. But did you receive notice? That's not the point." By noon, the story had gone viral. HOA Karen gets Range Rover crushed by cement truck trended on Reddit, Twitter, and TikTok. The video, shot by multiple neighbors and my security cameras, showed everything. Rebecca parking deliberately in front of the gate, ignoring phone calls, standing there recording as the truck approached, then screaming as her Range Rover was systematically destroyed. The comment sections were merciless. "Play stupid games, win stupid prizes." That's what happens when you mess with someone's livelihood. The entitlement is insane. Rebecca tried to control the narrative, posting her own video with captions about violent men and corporate bullies, but the evidence was overwhelming. People found and shared the certified letter, the restraining order, photos of her blocking the gate over 6 months, even the fraudulent lien she'd filed. Every dirty tactic, every lie, every bit of harassment was dragged into the light. The court hearing on my restraining order was scheduled for December 18th. Rebecca showed up with a new attorney, a real one this time, not Keith, but the evidence was insurmountable. The judge reviewed the documentation. 174 incidents of trespassing, certified notice, restraining order violation, fraudulent lien filing, and the events of December 4th. The judge's ruling was swift. Mrs. Thornton, you engaged in systematic harassment of Mr. Vasquez, repeatedly trespassed on his private property despite warnings and a restraining order, and ultimately caused damage to your own vehicle by knowingly obstructing lawful commercial operations. The restraining order is made permanent. You are ordered to pay Mr. Vasquez $8,400 in legal fees and $11,200 in lost business income. The fraudulent lien you filed is hereby removed from the property record, and I am referring this matter to the county attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to filing false documents. Do you understand? Rebecca's face was ashen. Yes, Your Honor. Her insurance company denied her claim entirely, citing negligence and willful trespass. The Range Rover was totaled $73,000 in damages she'd have to pay herself. The HOA board, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal, voted unanimously to remove her as vice president. A week later, a for sale sign appeared in front of her mansion. By February 2025, Rebecca and Keith had moved out. Neighbors told me she'd relocated to Tucson, quietly, without fanfare. The house sold for $2.3 $1,500,000 below asking price. Apparently, being the viral HOA Karen tanked its value. The quiet that followed was profound. For the first time in 8 months, I could drive home without wondering if my gate would be blocked. My business recovered. The viral video actually brought me new clients who appreciated my no-nonsense approach. I repaired the gravel where the Range Rover's fluids had leaked, replaced one damaged fence post, and added a small plaque near my gate. It reads, "Private property, respect it. Simple, clear, true." One afternoon in March, I stood at my gate watching the sunset paint the desert gold and purple. A young couple had moved into Rebecca's old house, a firefighter and a teacher, driving a sensible Honda. They'd waved to me that morning, friendly and respectful. No drama, no games, just neighbors. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Just got the final court filing. Rebecca's criminal fraud case was settled with probation and community service. She won't be filing fake liens again. I replied, good. Justice served. As I locked my gate that evening, I thought about everything this experience had taught me. People like Rebecca exist everywhere, convinced that titles and money make them untouchable, that rules apply to others but not to them. They'll push boundaries, manufacture authority, and weaponize bureaucracy until someone finally says no. The trick isn't to meet them with anger, that's what they want. The trick is to meet them with documentation, patience, and the law. Because when you follow every rule, give every warning, and document every detail, consequences stop being revenge. They become reality. That crushed Range Rover wasn't destroyed by my concrete truck. It was destroyed by 6 months of arrogance, entitlement, and the belief that warnings don't apply to important people. The truck was just the final equation. 32,000 pounds of legitimate business meeting, 5,000 pounds of trespassing, ego. Physics doesn't care about your HOA title. Gravity doesn't respect your property values. And justice, real justice, doesn't arrive with drama. It arrives with paperwork, timestamps, and the quiet satisfaction of watching someone learn that consequences are real. If there's one lesson I hope people take from this story, it's this. When someone crosses your boundaries, don't fight them in the mud. Build your case in stone. Document everything. Follow every law. Give every warning. Then, when they ignore it all, as people like Rebecca always do, let their own choices do the rest. Because the sweetest sound isn't metal crumpling. It's the silence that follows when entitlement finally meets reality, and reality doesn't blink. So, if you're dealing with your own HOA nightmare, your own Rebecca, your own battle against someone who thinks rules don't apply to them, remember this: patience isn't weakness. Documentation isn't paranoia, and consequences, when they're earned through months of ignored warnings, aren't revenge. They're just math. Cold, undeniable, and perfectly legal math. And sometimes, that math weighs 32,000 pounds and runs on diesel. The end.